When I first walked into the Oval Room, he said, "God, you're a good-looking fellow, aren't you?"
Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, British ambassador to the United States. There he was in the Oval Office as Donald Trump trumpeted the tariff deal. Well, I asked Lord Mandelson if the morning after the deal still looks quite so good.
The trade deal looks rather well, certainly for Britain. I mean, reaching a deal on trade that saves jobs, creates more jobs and opens up more business opportunities is a darn sight better than embarking on a trade war with your closest ally. So I'm very pleased with what we've achieved. It's taken many months of very tough negotiation. And it's also a platform for going further and opening up more trade opportunities. So that's what I'm throwing myself into.
You would admit, though, that all this has actually done is unwound a bit of what Donald Trump and ally did in embarking on that trade war. This isn't a bright new future, is it? It's just marginally taking us back to where we were before.
Well, I'd certainly rather this than keeping in place what he originally proposed and what he originally had. But you're not entirely right about that, no, because we're going to negotiate further and bring down further tariffs and remove further barriers to trade between us. That's what we're committed to, and I'm looking forward to doing that.
Kemi Badenoch says we've been shafted by this deal.
Well, Kemi Badenoch would say that, wouldn't she? I mean, how many times did we hear under the previous government that they were going to deliver some wonderful trade deal, and of course it never arrived, and it never arrived, and it never got done.
OK, let's talk about a different group then. Farmers expressing concern, particularly beef farmers. Isn't it the case that by allowing more American beef into the UK, British beef farmers are going to pay the price of you saving jobs in the car industry?
No, because British beef farmers are going to have the same quota and are going to be able to get their produce in the American market.
I want to take you back, actually, to when you were on Newsnight last summer. You must be shocked, given that you're there now in the residence in Washington. Take a listen to this.
There's talk swirling around when the ambassadorial positions may be handed out that you may be headed for the United States.
No. Everyone who knows me very well knows I'm heading towards Wiltshire, not Washington. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I am going to go back to the people from whence I came, and the sheep and the cattle and my dogs. Thank you very much.
But you might make
He's going to cultivate his garden, as Voltaire said.
Well, I was talking about heading towards Wiltshire that weekend, which I was.
How have you found it? How have you found it in Washington? How have you managed to get on with Donald Trump so well? He's praising you for your beautiful accent. What have you got that so many other diplomats from around the world haven't got?
When I first walked into the Oval Room, he said, "God, you're a good-looking fellow, aren't you?" I mean, so, you know, I tell you something about the president. He's a people person. You know, he takes people as they are at face value. He doesn't really have deep prejudices or preconceptions, however much some people try to fill his head with preconceptions about me. You know, he's judged me, as it were, on my merits. And he's offered me a very warm welcome, as others have done in his administration. He's been very straightforward to deal with. I mean, look, he's a president of the United States with whom we don't agree on everything as a country. Overwhelmingly, you know, our interests in the world do overlap in some respects. You know, we don't see eye to eye. But he's nonetheless a very easy person to talk to and to seek to influence. And if you take an example, say, of Ukraine, we have influenced his outlook on Ukraine and our attitude to Putin. You've seen how his stance and his language has changed just in recent weeks and indeed recent days. That's what being close allies is all about. They listen to us. We exchange views. We don't always agree immediately, but then in the end, more often than not, we do see eye to eye, or we see where our policies can converge, and that's very important to keep doing.
OK, but let's talk about some areas there where those views don't quite converge. The digital services tax, a tax on big American tech companies operating in the UK. Donald Trump wants to get rid of it. At the moment, it's UK government policy. It seems like it's on the table. You famously said you were intensely relaxed about people getting filthy rich as long as they pay their taxes. Are you intensely relaxed if filthy rich people like Elon Musk now don't pay their taxes through the digital services tax?
But I think you've missed the deal, Matt. Abolishing the digital services tax isn't in our trade deal.
Will it ever be on the table, or is that a red line? You're ruling that out now. That's not a discussion you're having?
If the Americans want to come back and discuss the digital services tax, it's up to them. They've done so in the past. We discussed it during the course of this negotiation, and what they suggested wasn't acceptable to us, so it's not in the deal.
You're also a former EU Trade Commissioner, of course. Last month, Rachel Reeves said that the UK's trading relationship with the EU was even more important than that with the USA. Do you agree with the Chancellor?
Well, it's larger. In that sense, we have a larger volume of trade. I don't know, I can't say what it's like by value, but the volume is definitely larger. And the problem about the trade deal that was negotiated, in inverted commas negotiated, by Boris Johnson when we left the European Union, is that it wasn't a very satisfactory one. It can be improved. There are a lot of loose ends left hanging when that Brexit deal was done. And the government is right to seek to improve that deal.
Knowing I was speaking to you tonight, Peter Mandelson, your whole career seems to have been spent sort of mediating between slightly warring factions. I wondered, you were famously the third man of British politics. Who's easier to mitigate between, Blair and Brown or Starmer and Trump?
That's a very, very good historical question, Matt, and I'm
Well, give me a wise answer, Peter.
My wise answer, I think, would go something like this. Starmer and Trump do not have identical politics. They're not cut from the same cloth, but they do both stand up for and defend their national interests. And where they see those interests converging, or whether they've got to be made to work well, they set their minds to achieving that. And they do it very well. They do it by talking well to each other, very straightforwardly. They have trust in one another. They've become, over these months, quite familiar with their respective approaches to issues and policy questions. And that's exactly what Britain needs. A Prime Minister who's going to stand up for Britain internationally, who's going properly to explain and defend our national interest, but who's also going to make sure that when it comes to our close allies, whether they be with the United States or in Europe, we maintain good relationships and we enable everyone to work properly together, both in our national interests, but also, frankly, in the interests of the rest of the world. And that's what Keir Starmer is doing.
And what do you say to people watching this tonight? You look at the polls. Donald Trump is incredibly unpopular amongst British voters, and they see Keir Starmer waving the letter from the King, dropping everything to rush to a speakerphone to speak to him on the phone, and they just wonder, actually, maybe they'd like to see their Prime Minister be more like Mark Carney in Canada or Anthony Albanese in Australia. They have stood up to Donald Trump, and they've stood up for their own country. What do you say to those people?
Sorry, Matt, I haven't noticed the Australian Prime Minister getting a good trade deal with the United States. I haven't noticed Mark Carney getting a good trade deal with the United States. Our Prime Minister has. And I tell you, I've received a lot of messages from fellow ambassadors here in Washington saying, congratulations, wish we were in the same position. How did you do it? Indeed, when I finish this interview, I'm going to see another ambassador who's coming to see me here at the residence to ask me precisely that question. How did we pull that off? So that's something, that's a feather in our caps, and something you and others, if I might suggest, should celebrate.
Just finally, though, I want to ask you about your secret weapon. I read that your dog Jock is the secret weapon in the ambassador's residence. Everyone seems to be wanting to come to the residence. But has Donald Trump... Donald Trump doesn't like dogs, does he? Has he met Jock?
He's not yet. Jock just came in here. I don't know whether you
can we
saw
see him
stroking him during your earlier question. Now he's gone off to chase a ball somewhere else. He's become an ambassador dog, a sort of a diplo dog. I mean, he is very popular here in Washington, and I hope to follow in Jock's footsteps and make myself as popular as he is.
Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, the UK ambassador to the United States of America. Thanks for joining us on Newsnight.